I know how much frustration there is within this fan base. Al Horford was like 1 for 8. He's been hurt and he's been ineffective. Jimmy is still a very good player, but he's not the same high-level player every single night. From where they're at right now in mediocre land to some different place. I don't see it.
My man, Nick Friedell, what's going on, brother?
Mr. Dibs, I've seen lots of crazy stuff with the most interesting team in basketball, but that was as pissed off as I have seen Steve Kerr in a while. And guys, I think the comparison was, remember that preseason years ago, I want to say maybe 18, where he was out there and going, I don't want to be here. I don't even want to be here. That was the time I've seen him that heated, at least outwardly. So it was quite an event last night in L.A. About 100 levels and layers we can get into. So let's do it.
Well, I wonder if you'd sort of weigh in on this, Nick, because Dibs and I, and we like to do this on this show, we like to argue about refs because when they mess up, I'll call it out, and then Dibs will defend it, and then rinse, repeat. And so Dibs kind of made the comment that when Steve loses his mind like that, it's about more than just those calls. When you see that, do you believe that that was largely about the calls that we saw last night, or were we also seeing a little bit of a window into how Steve is just feeling as a coach in general right now?
I don't think there's any question when you have the expectations that the Warriors did to start the year, Mark, and they just haven't played that well. I mean, they are just a supremely mediocre team as we speak and have been all year. There's no doubt that the frustration builds up over time. I will say in watching him, at least last night, I mean, he was so frustrated at the way they were playing, and I should say at the way they were playing, because they just could not make any kind of shot, open shot, anything, that Steve was bench at times. I mean, usually he's up and moving around. He was so mad at everything going on that he was just sitting there trying to collect himself. And then as the refs started to miss a few calls and that happened, I think it all boiled over. My sense last night was he was so upset about those calls that it spilled out. But to what you guys are saying, there's no doubt when a team isn't having success, the person everybody will look to first is the coach. And Steve's had an unbelievable amount of success through the years. But I think he sees what everybody else sees. They're just not consistent. They can't find what they need night to night to get out of the mediocrity that they're in. And absolutely, he's frustrated about it.
And you look at it, Steph was unable to get the shot going and not a lot of other offensive help from behind the line. Draymond Green goes 0 for 6. Is this just a case where this is kind of going to be the team that we're looking at? Buddy's not playing. Kuminga is not getting minutes, even though he wasn't listed with an injury. Are we kind of just sunk in a spot where no matter what happens with a Kuminga trade, this is largely going to be the product that we see?
Dibs, the answer to that question is yes. And I have been trying to scream it from the rooftops the last few weeks here, but anybody who thinks that January 15th or the deadline, that some miracle trade is going to come in, I just don't see it. Guys, I mean, look at the options. Again, people don't want to hear it. A lot of the fan base, I don't think, understands it, but they're hard capped. Can they make a move? Sure. There are moves to be made, but you got to match up the salaries. So are you better off if Jeremy Grant or Drew Holiday is on this team and Kuminga is not, if that's a direction that Mike Dunleavy wants to go with Joe Cronin in Portland? I guess so. But are you going to move, and Dibs, this goes to your point, from where they're at right now in mediocre land to some different place? I don't see it. I think they're better than what they've shown to this point, in that when you look at the numbers defensively, they've still been pretty solid. They just cannot generate enough consistent offense. But I know how much frustration there is within this fan base. I see it on Twitter every single day at Kerr, where I would caution everybody to just kind of take a deep breath. Look at the roster. The roster just does not have the talent that it needs. Al Horford was like 1 for 8. They were banking on him to be a real difference maker this year. He's been hurt and he's been ineffective. Draymond just has not played up to the level that he set for himself. I mean, Dibs, you said it. When he's missing all those threes, there's a reason they're giving him all those threes. I think Jimmy is still a very good player, but he's not the same high level player every single night that we saw even a couple years ago. This roster and the talent on it is flawed. And we haven't even talked about Moody, Pods, Kuminga. They just haven't taken a step. So there's blame all over the place for the way they've landed in the place that they've gotten into. But at the core, they're just not good enough. And that is a reality that I don't think a lot of at least the diehards out there want to accept right now, because they see Steph at the level that he's at, and they want to believe that there's something more out there.
All right, let's whittle it down from macro to micro then, Nick, because I think everybody's with you. Is there a magic trade that's going to suddenly make this team the 4 seed? Maybe not, but let's go piece by piece. And I want to start by asking it to you this way, because you know that this was thrown around on social media everywhere. The Thunder here, the Warriors sit their top players. Steve Kerr goes in front of the media, says, this is an opportunity for Kuminga to play, ... take a breath, and then here comes, Kuminga's got back soreness, and he doesn't play. Is anything going on there? Are the Warriors and Kuminga right now both incentivized for him to not play? Or do we take those reports at face value?
The whole thing was weird, Mark. I can only speak for myself personally. I'm sitting there, and you're asking Kerr, all right, well, when did Kuminga get hurt? And he's like, it popped up before the game. And I said, well, do you think it's going to linger? And he's like, I don't know. So are they both incentivized? To your question, at this point, it's like, why run him back out there? Everybody sees the writing on the wall. The divorce has been imminent for weeks at this point. I think on a professional level, though, I think Jonathan's decision, and he's the only one who can speak for himself. Was he really hurt? What was really going on? We'll continue to ask him, but I think it rubbed people within the organization the wrong way, because they didn't have those guys out there. They wanted him to get the minutes. I mean, Kerr was open about it. He said, this is, I think he was on with Bonte and Evan that day. He said, yeah. And they said, is Kuminga going to play? And he's like, yeah, this is the time for him to play. And then he doesn't play. And you're kind of sitting there going, okay. You're watching this relationship come to a close, but at least for me, as somebody who's covered the league, I feel like there's a professional responsibility. Now, if Jonathan's hurt, he's hurt, and only he knows the answer to that, and he hasn't really wanted to talk, in the last week or so, understandably, with all the other stuff going on. But Mark, specific to your question in that game, I think that was like the end. Because if you're sitting there and you have the head coach saying, hey, he's going to play, that we're going to put him out there, he's going to play however he's going to play, and then he doesn't play, it's like, just bring this thing to a close, because it is over.
Okay, you say this is the end. Are you saying Jonathan has played his last minute with the Warriors?
I wouldn't go that far, just because you never know what happens injury-wise. I think the Warriors would absolutely put him back into a game over the next couple weeks as they wait to figure out what's going on. I do not think, as we sit here right now, it's some situation, Mark, where they're just going to completely ice him and say, no, there's no chance between now and February 5th, 6th that he's going to play again. I wouldn't say that. I do think that we're entering into a phase where Kuminga is at the end of his Warriors run, and it will be better for everyone involved whenever that deal happens. What I'm curious about is, I know in talking to people within the organization, even a few weeks ago, it was, we're not just going to deal him to move him. It's not just going to be like, all right, well, this thing has gotten so bad that we're going to make this deal and it's going to be over with. I'm curious to see what happens in the next couple of weeks, though, because if everyone acknowledges it's time for it to end, are the Warriors in that front office more incentivized to say, oh, okay, fine, let's just take the best offer we can get and move forward? Or would they try to play hardball with other teams and say, we're not just going to give up this 23-year-old talented young player who others believe certainly still has more to prove in the league? So that part is fascinating. But absolutely, if you were asking me, do you think the deal gets made before the deadline? Absolutely, right now, I do.